students, cultural, faculty, friends. Pleasure for me to be here today. Typically, when you talk about government, when you talk about PSUs, the first picture which comes to mind is slow, inefficient, slothful, and nothing can be done. Too much red tape. Am I correct in saying that? But friends, my opinion, my belief is totally different. I am a hardcore votary of public sector. And I have always found it possible, that it is possible for you to achieve whatever you want to, almost anything to be achieved, provided you have a clear heart, a clear mind, and dedicated effort. I'm going to share some experiences, some learnings that I've gathered on this journey. And they are relevant because the question if it can be done here, then I think there is any situation, there should not be a situation where you cannot overcome. You should be able to do it in any situation. And the question Professor Agarwal asked, why not? And that is a very important question. So the major learning that I would like to talk about, transform or perish. You have to look at transforming, reinventing, look at your business models, your processes, your procedure, your technology. Everything has to be in sync with the aspirations of your customers and the reality around you. People are the most important asset in any organization. It is not technology. It is not your financial resources or cash reserves. It is not your assets. It is your people who are the most important asset. And how you motivate them, how you build ownership in those people, how you are able to align them, and that's what it is in public sector field. Major difference I find between public sector and private sector is private sectors align interests of their stakeholders much better with the interest of the organization. Skin in the game. Public sector, that is where probably failure. If you do that, you can succeed anywhere. Then, last thing that I would like to talk about is the issue of financial physicals. We typically have a financial target for an organization and say this is the turnover we're going to achieve, this is the profit we're going to achieve. But down the line, the target has to be physical performance. Financials are derivative of the physicals, not the. With the railways for 17 years. After that, I got an opportunity to move to IRCTC as Director of Tourism and Marketing, for which I had to resign from the Railway Traffic Service. Now, the challenge was there, because you've recently heard all about pension in the government. That's a very important part of anything in the government. 20 years would make it it would be pensionable. At 20 years, you get the I would get the pension. I would get, railways. A very important facility used to be passes, train passes for the family, and medical facilities, etc. So at 17, all my friends advised me, don't take this risk. Wait for 20 years, and the closer they were, the rougher the language. You can understand the language. I won't repeat the language. So, what do you want? Why are you doing this? But for me, it was like, this is an opportunity I've got. I don't know whether I will get another opportunity like this. So I did take that. I joined IRCTC in 2007, January, as Director of Tourism and Marketing. Probably the youngest director on the board of a PSU. I had a very interesting portfolio. The interesting part of IRCTC, e-ticketing, tourism. E-ticketing in IRCTC, I think I'll have to step out of the red if I... So e-ticketing in IRCTC started in 2002. A very dedicated team which had actually built up the complete system from scratch. And when I joined 2007, we were at about 3 to 4% market share, about 20,000 tickets at the peak per day. When I left, by the time I left, it was 47% market share, and we were doing almost 4 lakh tickets a day. Now that inflection point, how did that inflection point come about, and how did we achieve 47% market share in a situation where internet penetration, please remember we are talking of 12 years ago or 14 years ago, internet penetration was 10 to 12%, and credit card penetration was less than 10%. So at that stage, how did we achieve 47% market share? So when IRCTC started, it started with something called iTickets. So those were the physical tickets, which were you booked online and they were delivered to you by courier. If you had to go for a refund, you had to go to the physical counter to surrender the ticket, get a refund. Then in 2005, it started with the e-tickets, which you now see, where you can book online, cancel online, get a refund online, everything happens online. The issue was that while the i-ticket was a physical document, you surrender it and you get your money. But the e-ticket, you could print out as many copies, you could travel on one and surrender another one for a refund. So therefore, if your name was there waitlisted, then you had to apply for a refund. Then somebody would check at the destinations where the charts are deposited that the person had actually traveled or not traveled, and then only the refund would be given. So imagine at 20,000 tickets, about 5,000 refunds a day. That is the sort of effort which went in, and that was why, because of the refunds, the i-ticket was still popular and e-tickets were not going up. We made a small change, but which had a big effect. What we did was we said, look, once the chart is being prepared, anybody who's waitlisted gets dropped automatically. So there will be nothing like a waitlisted e-ticket. And the money goes back automatically to your account wherever it was paid from. Now the issue here was, the challenge here was a government department giving money back to somebody without asking for that person having asked for that money back. Without an application, how do you refund money to the person? But once we managed to explain to the senior people and the concerned people, they all came on board and we made that change. And that was when there was no more logic for i-tickets and e-ticketing started picking up. So that was the start, that you can see that inflection point. And of course, how did we go up? We went up through a network of agents. We had almost 1.5 lakh agent outlets across the country, which helped us take there. Of course, the second part of it has come through technology, connectivity, internet, all that. That has brought the subsequent changes, but that critical alignment has happened for these two changes. And the most important lesson for me was, what made sense yesterday may not work today, and it definitely will not work tomorrow. So the constant need to review your business models, your processes, your technologies to be in sync with the market, and people matter, ownership. This was the team which had actually built the system. It mattered to them to keep it running well. And that's what we got this. Then the Maharaja's Express. Some of you may have heard of this, one of the leading luxury trains of the world. So this is some photos of pictures of the interiors of the train. When you're talking of luxury tourism, it is not just a hotel, the quality of the hotel, but the experiences. So the experiences for the people, wherever they're traveling on the train, the day that they're going out. All this created under government procedures, what so-called L1 system, tendering system, everything followed. People on government salaries doing the marketing, and we managed to get one of the leading luxury trains of the world. Private sector works on incentives, we worked on salaries, and yet we got this. So again, that if the people are with you, anything is possible. And of course, I had the opportunity to build up the tourism team because that was a new business. So this was some of the important learnings from my stay at IRCTC. Then after that, from IRCTC, I went to a company called CEL, Central Electronics Limited. This was a small company under the Department of Scientific and Industrial Research. This was a company which had been, the reds you can see are the loss years. So till 2013. And those blues are the profit, but that last set of blues that you see is actually a revival package. So that has come into the saying profit and then again gone back. So had been making losses for decades. Virtually six company. This was what this was the state of the company. Totally, all buildings, everything was really in a bad state. 90% net worth eroded, dilapidated infrastructure, demotivated workforce, dissatisfied customers, overgrown campus. The question people asked me why I was going. While I was going from a director's post to a CMD's post, so it was a higher grade, but I was taking a 25% pay cut. Because IRCTC was a profit-making company, so we had something called PRP, performance-related pay, and additional allowances and all that, which were not there because this was a loss-making company. But why did I go there? The challenge. This company had been the pioneer in the field of solar photovoltaics in the country. So India's first solar cell in 1978, first solar panel in 1979, and the first solar power plant in 1980s, all done by this company. In fact, it would be the third or fourth one internationally as well at that stage. On the signaling front, that was the second business stream, so it had developed the axle counters, which were even used in railway signaling systems. Even today it is used. And a number of important defense developments, which were being components and systems manufactured by the company. So all three sunrise areas, all three public sector areas, yet the public sector turning sick. This was a challenge I could not resist. And this entire story that, you're a very strong communist union, which won't allow you to do anything. But when I went there, I found good people waiting to be led. After the initial skepticism was crossed, the unions actually became my biggest supporters and helpers. Initially, when I went there, we talked about some creating a new facility. So they would take me to some shed and say, "Sir, ये देखिए यहाँ पे this created equipment इतने करोड़ का आया था, उस CMD लेके आया था यहाँ पड़ा हुआ है." Then कि जी यहाँ पे this is the equipment which opened, but it did not perform. That was the CMD who got it. It is lying here. So these are the stories they told me and said, "Sir, आप जिसकी बात कर रहे हो, एक और पड़ा रहेगा यहाँ पे." So I said, "No, we will create something which will last." In fact, in one of those buildings, when we went in, while going in, it's building piled high with scrap and old PCs and instruments piled high. They said, "Sir, मत जाइए, वहाँ पे स्नाप रहते हैं." I said, "आइए चलिए, let's So we went cautiously inside. I led, takes everything to see, and there was nothing there. So we were discussing how to clean it out. The union leader came forward and said, "Sir, आप जाइए, 15 दिन बाद आइएगा, हम कर लेंगे सब." And lo and behold, when I went back after 15 days, that entire area had been sorted out, cleaned up, and properly stacked. And of course, ultimately, we created a new module production line. This was a shed, which of course, in this shed finally it had to be totally renovated, wall, roof, floor, virtually it was a new shed. And we created this. The people who had never worked on an automated production system before, how did they run this? So, there was initial effort to actually train them. We went to automotive part manufacturers, their assembly lines, they were taken to. A lot of training, a lot of efforts, and in fact, we had a record time for setting this up. And once the equipment containers arrived at site, within 4 weeks, the line was up and running from that time, which was again a record, which could be achieved by those people themselves. So another incident there were, we used to have contract labor, daily wagers, who used to do a huge contribution, give us a huge contribution in the production and in the services. But every month, their salaries would get delayed. I would be after my HR people, my finance people, that look, these are people who can least afford it. People will go hungry if you 2 months you don't get the salary. But some excuse कि जी इसका master roll नहीं आया, वो contractor ने bill नहीं भेजा, वो यहाँ पे फंस गया, वो बैंक की problem हो गई. Some excuse every month would happen. Come November, festival season, and I found that the payment had still not been made. So I issued an order saying that henceforth, salary of the HR head, the finance head, and the CMD would be paid Only after salaries of all the contract wages and everybody was paid. Initially, huge thing, I have a car EMI, I have some other thing. How will I do? I said, look, that fellow has children to feed. How does he manage? And lo and behold, next month onward, never heard of any problems. The system was changed. Everything was done. I didn't have to get into anything. They automatically did that. So skin in the game. Of course, this is not a traditional way. I don't say this is the way it should be done. But skin in the game is very important. Traditionally, we should look at, and everywhere I've gone, I've looked at, the performance appraisal systems, typically broken. It has to be objective. The KRAs, the balanced scorecards, that system has to be objective. So this was an important lesson. Again, we created, this was bottom left, you see, this was area which was like Jatropha plantation, overgrown. And we created a solar technology park there using modules which had been lying there for decades in the store, old technology modules. There was no market for those modules. So we created solar pavements, solar ponds, solar trees, solar roof, various other innovative things. And we said, let's use all of them. This was created. We created solar parking spaces, solar parking sheds. In fact, when I joined there, this was a haphazard parking. You wouldn't know what the way they were being parked, but finally everything was like when you would orderly. And this is, you see, the company has been making profits in the last 10 years. So even after I left, it continued to make profits. To my mind, that is the biggest satisfaction. If I leave and it goes down, it doesn't mean I did a great job and then nobody else could do it. It means I have failed to set in place a system which would continue. This was the accumulated profit and loss. You'll see almost its entire period, the company had been in losses in the red. But after that, it has continued to go up. Now that is a sustainable turnaround. And this was a case study by IIM Ahmedabad also. And again, achieved by the same team. They were there, the same people, they achieved it. My role was minimal, I would say. After that, I joined BHEL 2019. When I joined BHEL, the company was in a pretty bad state because the primary business, which is thermal power plants, that business was declining. The energy transition, so there were no orders, from 2019 to 2022. 3 years, there was zero ordering. And before that also, the ordering had gone down. The company had not diversified because when the diversification effort started in 2007, 8, 9, 10, after that, immediately, there was a glut of thermal orders. So just running to keep up those orders, it had not diversified. Then, in fact, this project execution was in a bad state because the focus had been on turnovers. So turnover you can achieve by 80% of your turnover in a 20,000 crore project, 80% of the turnover comes on supplies. So you supply material to site and you get your turnover, you can show a profit, but the customer is not going to pay you. In fact, in the year that the company did a turnover of some 49,000 crores, had a book profit of 10,000 crores, it had a cash deficit of 3,000 crores. In 2021, COVID year, one of the lowest turnovers, 17,000 crores, a loss of 3,600 crores, but cash positive. So the focus on turnover, the turnover mentality was what was actually killing the company. But look at the opportunity. One of the best engineering manufacturing companies in the country, 30,000 people, 8,000 engineers, engineering design capabilities crossing all disciplines, civil, mechanical, electrical, electronics, nuclear, hydro, you name it, this company had it. And strong facilities, strong capabilities. But the company, and good people, excellent top management team, excellent people, very keen people also. But again, the company was virtually on a deathbed and then it was hit by COVID, 2 years of COVID. 9 months after I landed there, we were hit by COVID, which devastated our, the project progress, and we had huge problems in our works also. So we changed the focus to project-centric. We said, which is going back to the learning I said about, the physical driving the financials, not the other way around. So if you give a project head a turnover target, he will supply material to site, 1 lakh tons of steel, he gets a turnover. But the customer doesn't want that steel lying there. He wants a functional power plant. So the focus has to be project delivery. So that change of focus to project centric. Now see on the left, the graph on the left. So we were, instead of looking at turnover from project site, we said we will look at execution, tonnage, and tonnage of steel, cubic meters of, 1,000 cubic meters of concreting. Those are the targets that a project head has to have. So the left graph shows how our project execution went up. Erection, 2.4 lakh tons in 1920, went up to 5.4 lakh tons in 22-23. The line you see is because we were not getting any new thermal orders. The outstanding order book on hand, because orders getting executed, so the order book on hand went down from 70,000 crores to almost 49,000 crores. In that decline, the turnover has gone up. Look at the middle graph. We focused on closing technical issues. We focused on closing, there were a lot of punch points, issues which were unrectified, which had to be rectified, which would take time, money, but we did no return. But the customers, you would have a satisfied customer if you did that job. But nobody wanted to take that effort. So we focused on that. In the 3 years, we did closure of more than 40 projects. 5 years before that, the closure was only about 10 projects in 5 years. This was a change. And the last graph shows the result. Liquidation against the net billing for the current year, we were at 59%. What billing you are raising against that, how much money is coming in? What you ultimately matters is how much money is going to come into you. So that went up from 59% to 86%. And that reflected the quality of the turnover, the quality of what was being done. This is the biggest lesson of, importance of physicals more than financials. The people on the ground have to have financial targets. They can't be having financial. Your target will be financial. If you want to sell, you're going to want to sell apples and make, 10,000 rupees. And you say you have to sell 100 kgs of apples. Now, if that seller's target is 10,000 rupees, where's he going to go? His target is 100 kgs. The 10,000 and the profit, all is a derivative. And that is the way it has to be for any industry. So these were this was one of the biggest learnings. Of course, look at that. Look at the energy. So in all the 3 organizations, I encouraged people to, join the Delhi Half Marathon. I have been running it for the last 15 years. So, and in the last year, BHEL had one of the biggest contingents in the Delhi Half Marathon, almost 1,400 to 1,500 people participating. Energy which is created by that comes back to you, helps you go ahead. So, coming back to what I said about, people being the most important thing. We have to get the right people, give them the faith to perform. We have to create ownership. Ultimately, when the people have ownership, skin in the game, and they have the confidence that you are there with you. In business, you have to take risks. But if risks means failures. So if you have done 5 things, 1 may fail, but you will get 4 successes. If you tell that person that, look, next time make sure that one failure doesn't happen, be more careful. Those 4 successes will go down to 2. You are underperforming, the organization is underperforming. If you tell the same person, look, I give you 2 more failures, give me 8 more successes. It's a different story. He goes out looking for successes, you get the victories. So an important thing to go beyond your own fears. Find the right people and give them the faith and support to succeed. I think that is probably the most important thing. You've seen this, Simran Sharma, visually handicapped, gold medalist for the 200 meters in the Paralympics, running with her guide. 200 meters in less than 25 seconds. How many of you can do it with your eyes open? Please don't try it with your eyes closed. I don't want to be responsible for somebody breaking his neck. So please don't think, but there's a message here. That is the message of faith. that piece of rope is guiding her to victory. Imagine the fear which has been overcome, the faith which has been given to reach that victory. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being such a wonderful audience. I wish you faith to overcome your fears and go from victory to victory. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Shinghal, for kicking off our event with such an insightful talk that was almost everything from every sector. Too much for us to grasp in one go. Please give a round of applause to Dr. Shinghal. We would now like to take a moment to express our gratitude to our esteemed guests through the presentation of mementos. I request Professor Agarwal to kindly present the memento to Dr. Nalin Shinghal as a token of appreciation for his valuable presence and insightful talk. Please.
It was a pleasure, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Every time I hear you, something to learn.
Thank you so much.